Let's take this time and look at milk production, which is lactation sometimes. This is a section which is the last. This is the last section when you look at animal reproduction. There are a few things that I want you to master here. Be able to define these three terms. Be able to define lactation, be able to define dry period, also be able to define milk ejection. When you define the first two terms, lactation and the dry period, you must know the definition and also know the duration. So we'll talk about the days, how many days does lactation takes place and how many days does the dry period takes place. So we'll look at that one. So I want you to know the definition plus the duration. But as for milk ejection, don't worry about the duration there. Then we will look at the structure of the udder. There are some few things that I want to highlight when you look at the structure of the udder. So we'll look at the parts. After looking at the parts, we'll also look at the functions of some of those parts. Then we must know the process of milk ejection. And when we look at the process of milk ejection, the most important part again there is to know the hormones that are involved. So we'll look at all those hormones. Then there's milk that is produced by the cow within the first 3 days. It's very important to know the name of that milk and the importance or the functions of that milk. So it's very important for the calf to get that milk, because failure to do so, you may find that the immune system of the calf will be so weak because it will be lacking very important nutrients. The last part, which I believe is very important, we must be able to interpret a lactation curve. We will look at a lactation curve, and when we interpret the lactation curve, we will look at some relationship between the milk production, the butter fat. You must know the relationship there. We look at a relationship between milk production and the body weight of the animal. We'll also look at a relationship between milk production and the feed intake of the animal. And when we look at the feed intake, we will also look at the relationship between an animal, or we look at the relationship whereby we say the animal is having more roughages. What will happen to the butter fat? The animal is having more concentrates. What will happen to the butter fat? So that's what we will check. But for this section, this first part, I want us to look at the two bullets: the definitions of lactation, dry period, milk ejection, and the structure of the udder. That's what we'll look at for now. Let's look at these three definitions. When we talk about lactation, people, we say lactation, this is a period whereby a cow is producing milk. So when we talk about lactation, we say a period which a female animal, which is a cow in this case, produces milk. Remember, I said you must also be able to tell the duration of that period. The duration of lactation, it takes for approximately 305 days. Please make sure that you take note of 305 days. We also have the dry period. It's dry. Take note of dry. We're saying dry period, it is a non-lactating period. And this non-lactating period, it takes for about 60 days, which is 2 months. So in a simpler way, when we talk about the dry period, we are saying, people, this is a period whereby the animal is not producing milk. Hence we say it's a non-lactating, because remember we said lactating, the animal is producing milk. Now we're saying it's a non-lactating, so the animal is not producing milk. Take note of the duration. For dry period, it's 60 days. For lactation, it's 305 days. Then we have this part, milk ejection. we will have a diagram on the next session. We'll have a diagram that will talk about milk ejection. We say milk ejection, in brackets I said it's milk let down. This is the release, take note of release of milk from the udder into the teats and the teat canal. So this is the process, people, whereby now milk is released from the udder, going through all those ducts that we talked about up until it reaches the teat cistern and goes through the teat canal. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about milk ejection. These three terms, they are very crucial for section A. These three terms, they are very crucial for section A. It could be 1.3 or 1.4. It's very important to master them. Lactation, the animal is producing milk for a period of 305 days. Dry period, the animal is not producing milk for a period of 60 days. Milk ejection, the animal is releasing milk. We will know the hormone that is responsible for the release of milk as we move along. Let's now focus on the structure of the udder. When we look at the structure of the udder, people, I want me to understand this one in a very good way. We will start by looking at the supportive tissues. We'll start by looking at the supportive tissues, whereby we look at the external part of the udder. Then we will go on to look at those tissues that support the udder, that helps us to be held to the abdominal wall. We will then look at the internal structure of the udder, and then we will look at the teat, the structure of the teat of the udder. So we'll look at those three parts or those three sections when we look at the udder. Let's start with this one, the external part. We say the udder, it is divided into four sections, or it is divided into four quarters. There are two quarters on one side, on the left, and there are two quarters on the right. We say these two parts, the left and the right, they are divided, or they are separated by a longitudinal groove that we call intramammary groove. So we are saying the udder has two halves. The right half and the left half. What divides the two halves is the intramammary groove. And one quarter will lead to a teat, the other quarter will also lead to a teat. All those four quarters, they have their own teat. If we can look at this diagram, we are saying, people, here, when we look at this one, we are saying we have what? We have two halves now. This is the half and this is the other half. Now we are saying these two halves, they are divided by a longitudinal groove. This longitudinal groove, we give it a name and say it what? It's intramammary groove. So where is the intramammary groove? It is between the two halves. So it separates the two halves. And what is the name of the groove that separates the two halves? We call it what? Intramammary groove. So please make sure that you master that. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Let's move along and look at the supportive tissues. Remember we said two halves, and the two halves are separated by intramammary groove. Let's look at the supportive tissues. The udder is supported by two groups of ligaments. It is supported by two groups of ligaments, one MSL, two LSL. The MSL is median suspensory ligaments. Then the LSL is lateral suspensory ligaments. This is what I wanted to master here. When we look at these two ligaments, or two groups of ligaments, I want you to master where is it found and what is its function. The first one is the median suspensory ligaments. The median suspensory ligaments, people, we say this is a ligament that separates the two quarters on the left and the two quarters on the right. So it is a ligament that separates the two quarters on the left and the two quarters on the right. If I may add this part, which is not here on your slides, this median suspensory ligament, it also provides primary support to the udder. It also attaches the udder to the abdominal cavity. So it will separate the two quarters on the right, the two quarters on the left. Provide primary support for the udder. 3, attaches the udder to the abdominal cavity. If we may try to look at this one, we are saying you have the udder. If you look there at the top, we have what? This median suspensory ligament. This median suspensory ligament, it is the one that will attach the udder to the abdominal cavity. So it's very important for you to master that one. Let's have this one, lateral suspensory ligaments, LSL. The LSL, in a simpler way, it surrounds the udder. So this one, you find it on the sides of the udder, stretching from the tendons around the pubic bones. So in a simple way, these lateral suspensory ligaments, they surround the udder in a simpler way. So the supportive system of the udder, they have two groups of ligaments: median suspensory ligaments, the one that separates the two quarters on the right and the two quarters on the left. It also provides primary support to the udder, and it also attaches the udder to the abdominal cavity. Then you have the lateral suspensory ligaments, the one that surrounds the udder. Let's now go deeper and look at the internal structure of the udder. The udder, iti ay nama mammary glands. Inside these mammary glands, you will find your alveolus, where there will be milk production, which is the synthesis of milk, and where the milk will be released or will be secreted during milk ejection. So what we have, people, is that we have numerous alveoli or alveoli. These alveoli, they are surrounded by blood capillaries, by a network of blood capillaries. These blood capillaries, they are the ones that will provide nutrients that will be used by the cow during the synthesis of milk. So sometimes you may come across a question that says, where is milk synthesized? Where is milk produced? Make it simple for yourself to get a mark. Just say milk is synthesized in the alveoli. Then we know that the alveoli, they are found there in the mammary glands. Still in those alveoli, you will have a central cavity in the epithelial cells. These central cavity, they are the ones that will store milk just after it has been synthesized in the mammary glands. They are the ones that will store milk. Please follow this pathway, follow this pathway. When the milk moves from the central cavity, it will go to lobules. What are lobules? Lobules are a cluster of alveoli, a group of alveoli combined together. Those are lobules. The milk will move from central cavity to lobules, and they will move through ducts that we call small ducts. From the lobules, they will go to lobes. Now the question is, what are lobes? Lobes are groups of lobules combined together. How do they go to lobes? They go to a duct that we call common duct. Then from the lobes, they will go to gland cistern. How do they go to the gland cistern? They will use ducts that we call large milk ducts. From the gland cistern, they will go to a TEAT cistern. Now we are talking about a TEAT. They'll go to a TEAT cistern where they will be stored temporarily before they are ejected. Yes, before they are ejected, which is milk ejection through the TEAT canal. So let's try to look at it thoroughly. We have your alveoli, where milk is produced, temporarily stored on central cavity. It goes to the lobules through small ducts. It goes to the lobes through common duct. It goes to the gland cistern through large milky ducts. Then it goes to the TEAT cistern where it is stored before it is ejected. If I can go back a little bit to the mammary glands where you find your alveoli. The mammary gland, they have to develop or they have to grow before milk is produced, because they are small, but they have to grow, they have to be stimulated to grow. There is a hormone that is responsible to stimulate the growth of the mammary glands. That hormone, we give it a name and say it's luteinotrophic hormone. Sometimes they shorten it and say it's LTH, luteinotrophic hormone. What is the role of the luteinotrophic hormone? It is to stimulate the growth of the mammary gland that takes place before milk production. So that's what I wanted to highlight there before I move on. Let's now look at the structure of the TEAT itself. You see how we are moving on. We started with the external part. We went into the supportive tissues. We went to the internal part. Now we are looking at the TEAT, the internal structure of the TEAT. There are three things that I wanted to master here. One, we have the TEAT cistern. We've already talked about the TEAT cistern. The role of the TEAT cistern in a simpler way is to store milk before it is removed or before it is released from the TEAT or from the udder. The role of the TEAT cistern, we say it's where the milk is held or stored, you can say stored there, before it is removed through the TEAT end, which is the TEAT canal, during suckling or milking. So that the cow is suckling or the calf is suckling or there's a person who is milking the cow, or we are using a milking machine. We also have a TEAT canal. What is the role of the TEAT canal? The TEAT canal, we just say, is just a smaller hole through which the milk is released or is thrown during the suckling of the calf or the milking, whereby we're having a person who is milking the cow. So those are the first two things that I want to do. TEAT cistern, milk is stored. TEAT canal, it's a hole where milk is released. Then we have this part. This part is very important. This part, it's prevent bacterial infection. This part is found at the end or at the opening of the TEAT canal. What is this? What is the name of this part? We call it Furstenberg's rosette. Furstenberg rosette. What does it do? It helps in defense against mastitis. So it prevents mastitis in a simpler way. Just to brief you, when you talk about mastitis, we are talking about a bacterial disease. It's a disease that is caused by a pathogen called the bacteria. And this disease, the mastitis, it affects the udder. What it will do, it will cause the udder to be swollen, and the udder becomes so hard. It is swollen, it becomes so hard. And what happens is that the milk that comes out there, you find that the milk, it contains some blood stains. It contains blood, and the production of milk also decreases. That is the part that I wanted you and me to take note of. So in this case, we were only focusing on the structure of the udder. Then we'll have time and look at milk ejection and the lactation curve. Let's try to summarize it, maybe using the structure that we have here. We talked about the external part. We said on the external part we have we said they are divided into four, but into four glands or four quarters. Then we have two quarters on the right, two quarters on the left. Then we said they have two halves. We have this half and this half. And then we also say these two halves, they are divided by what, or they are separated by what? By a groove that we call intramammary groove. That's what we talked about, which I believe that you were able to understand it. Then we said, when we look at the supportive tissues, we said you have the median suspensory ligament, the one that separate the two quarters on the left and the two quarters on the right. We also say it provides primary support for the udder. We also say it attaches the udder to the abdominal cavity. So that's what we talked about. We also say we have lateral suspensory ligaments, those that are found on the surrounding of what? Of the udder, or it surrounds the udder. So that's what we talked about when we talk about the supportive tissues. We then moved on and talk about the internal structure. We said you have your mammary glands here. You have your mammary glands, and the mammary glands, you also have your alveoli. And then we said in the alveoli, it's where milk is produced. Then the milk will be stored in the central cavity, taken by the small ducts, going to the lobules. From the lobules, it goes to the lobes using the common duct. Then from the lobes, it goes to the gland system using the large or the major milk ducts, Then from there, it will go to the TEAT system, where it will be stored temporarily. From the gland system, it goes to the TEAT canal, where it is released. We then said, if we talk about the TEAT, we said the TEAT, it contains a TEAT system for milk storage before it is released. It also contains the TEAT canal, where the milk is thrown. We then said the tip or the opening of the TEAT, it has a Fastenberg's rosette. The Fastenberg's rosette, we said it prevent, or it help with the defense of mastitis, so it prevent mastitis. So that is the summary part of it. We will look at the other parts if we get time.